Hi, Sophia here from Team Allston Brighton. In terms of the rationale behind the organizations that we included in our funding proposal, we were interested in two key theories of change. The first being that we believe that meaningful change comes from the ground up. And to that end, whatever the organization is doing should include a component of really addressing those base issues around everyday life that often environmental justice communities have compounding the effects of pollution. So, for example, issues of access to transportation, access to healthy food, access to a safe and reliable housing situation, and work. All of those are really key elements to allowing a community the time and space that it needs to self-advocate. Besides community stability, the second theory of change we were most interested in is the belief that an organization's work must be purposefully connected to its community in order to truly empower it. And for that end, we were looking at organizations that we could tell were really engaged within the community, either had weekly town halls, had members of the community that were on the organization's board or its leadership team, or members of the community that were actively working on the ground to further the organization's project. All of those are examples of proper connection to the community from the organization's end. And we really focused on those two, community stability and community empowerment, and their intersection within each organization's mission and their program ideas.
So we all came into the Social Impact-a-thon from various backgrounds, and so we walked away with different types of learnings, but a lot of our learnings were centered around a few things. The first was kind of learning more about what environmental justice is and the many different kind of cross-field forms that it takes, whether that is around housing or mobility or social and economic opportunity or physical and mental health. And then our learnings also centered a lot around kind of the discussions and questions that we posed in the beginning part of our proposal process. And that started out with kind of what generally, not just in the environmental justice space, causes most impactful change. Is it removing barriers from communities so that way they have the ability to self-advocate, or does it help a community self-advocate more if you provide tools for them to do so? And that kind of aligns with the stability versus community empowerment divide that kind of Sophia discussed earlier. Another question that we asked was, what's an appropriate risk appetite? If you give money to an organization that has a smaller budget, does that mean it's likely to go further? If you give money to organizations that are part of a coalition, do the synergies that come from that coalition mean that that money is more likely to go further? Or potentially that money is going to foster collaboration between those nonprofits in the future? We also talked about whether kind of focusing on base building or focusing on addressing immediate concerns in a community, which of those holds more value, and how does affecting the physical space that somebody lives in affect the ways that a community can self-empower and other kind of downstream health effects, socioeconomic effects, versus addressing the socioeconomic and the health and the opportunity and having that change the physical space, kind of the chicken and the egg, and which one do you invest in first?
I think that the biggest lesson I learned outside of the things that Sophia and Marley talked about was not specifically related to environmental justice or philanthropy, though I learned a whole lot about those things, but was actually related to how to work well as a team and what it takes to meet a whole bunch of people and then do a big project with them right away, something time-consuming and kind of stressful. And we spent a lot of time, especially the first night, talking about our strengths and figuring out what we each thought we brought to the table. And it was really inspiring to see a whole bunch of people share what they thought their best skills were. And I really enjoyed that. And then, of course, it was very rewarding to see that translated into action. And another thing that I learned that was really crazy to me, something that, was a new thought, was thinking about, the difference between what organization was my favorite and what organization best aligned or was working really well with a theory of change that I thought was most effective. And that was a lot of the discussions that we had were about how, even though we liked the work this organization was doing, or we thought that it was really important, how we had this theory of change that we thought was the most effective way to do it. So, how do we balance those two things? And I really, I learned a lot.
Hi, my name is Connor Messer, and I'm a fifth-year bioengineer. I had a great time at the Social Impactathon this weekend. I think one of the biggest lessons that I learned was related to relevance. I think it's something that I've always known, that you should be directly tied in community with the people that you're working with, but I found that a lot of stories that were told about how this is done well were super impactful. I think the director of resilience was talking about how she actually rode the bus in the community that she was working in to hear stories, to hear solutions, to hear insights from the people that she was working with. And this idea that the people in the community are actually the experts at the things that relate to them, and the issues that involve their community is really impactful, and is something that I want to take into some work that I do, as well as look for in organizations that I'm going to be partnered with or giving to. So thank you for the opportunity for just being a part of this great experience, and I hope to take these lessons forward with me later.
What inspired and impressed me most about the organizations that I worked with this weekend was how much they all really seemed to care about what they were doing. They all really wanted to make a change, whether it was fixing the lead in the water pipes in Boston, or working with disadvantaged youth that were in prison, or other kinds of environmental injustices. They all really wanted to make a change. I've always known about environmental issues like climate change, but I never really knew about environmental injustices. So it was really eye-opening to me to see how many different environmental injustices there are and how these organizations are working to fix them. We as a group tried to narrow down our focus to organizations that worked in the areas of community stability and youth engagement and education. This turned out to be really hard to do because, as it turns out, all organizations fulfill this criteria. They all really left me feeling inspired to make a change in my everyday life, inspired to go out and help and work potentially with these organizations, to take more classes at Northeastern, and to really just try and help in every single way I can.
Our team wanted to ensure that the voices of local community stakeholders would be heard through our investments, and we found that Green Roots was emblematic of our philosophy that social change happens through a combination of community stabilization and community engagement. We were blown away by the degree to which Green Roots protects the health and well-being of its community through actions like the resistance of the Eversource substation and their food justice programs. We're also blown away by the degree to which they engaged with their community through community events, youth development programs, community surveys, and volunteer opportunities. Their partnerships with other local organizations like the Green Justice Coalition, the Neighborhood of Affordable Housing, Cog Design, and their work to open lines of communication with the local business community was also impressive to our team. The other organization I want to talk about that we funded was the Clean Water Fund. They were a standout organization to us in terms of their work to address issues of community stability. In particular, their work replacing lead pipes has transformative power in the region and could place marginalized communities in a healthier and more secure position in the future. Their collaboration with other grassroots organizations in the region to create a regional electrical microgrid also signified to us that despite being a national organization, they placed a high value on inclusivity from the communities that they work within.